All right. We're good, I think. I think we're good. So, first, the sponsors. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com and check out all the sponsors. I want to give a special thanks to everybody. It's a new year, new episode. I'm excited. I got a special guest today that was directed to me as the most interesting man in the world. And I had multiple people come to me and say, you got to have this guy on. And when I asked him, he said, why me? Like, what the hell? So I'm excited about this. We got the one and only international man of mystery, most exciting man in the world, Scotty Nelson.
Hey, buddy.
What's going on?
Thanks for having me on.
Listen, you come highly recommended. We're not quite sure why yet, but we'll get there.
Okay.
So I've heard a lot of good things. You're businessman, entrepreneur, black belt, right? Black belt.
Black belt, yep.
That's amazing in and of itself. We could spend hours on that. How did you get to this point, and why do you think some people think you're this interesting man? What's the journey? How did you get to this point in life?
Well, the most interesting man thing comes from the fact that I look like the Dos Equis guy, and I look so much like the Dos Equis guy that Facebook's facial recognition tags me every time someone uploads.
Oh, no way.
Of the most interesting man in the world. So a couple of my friends said they want to petition to change who the most interesting man in the world
so
is.
There's depth to this. There's real depth is actually a thing.
Yeah.
Holy
and
shit.
then, I don't know, I guess I've had kind of a crazy life, like I've lived all over the world. And
yeah, I was talking to Dan Hart, and I got a little bit of that vibe. He's got his fingers in a lot of crazy shit.
He sure does.
And when we were talking about you, he's like, you really, because like you got the stem cell thing, you got the ghee thing. There's so much. And how do you weave in and out of so many other businesses like that? Is it just a commodity to you? How do you do that?
Man, I just do it, right? That's how you do it. But I mean, for me, it all kind of weaves together, like, martial arts. I did a little bit of martial arts when I was a kid, but like most people, my friend Rob came over with a UFC 1 tape back in the day, watched it on the couch.
Horrible.
And, next thing you know, hooked, right? So I had been boxing a little bit before that, but I was living in Huntington Beach, California, which is like the fist fighting capital of America, right?
Bare knuckle,
and,
original.
Just down on Main Street, by the beach, any given night, people are fighting.
That
right?
Sharky's down there, right down to the donut shop.
Yep. So... but that's how I got started. And then, martial arts, of course, especially jiu-jitsu, it always leads to meeting so many great people. And, basically my whole entire group of friends and all around, almost all of us train jiu-jitsu. And, it's just led to meeting some great people, and I've met some great opportunities through it.
There's a bar down there. I think it's like the Black Hole or something.
Man, I wasn't there.
It's painted black
long,
so you could find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've spent some time down there. Not good time. Okay time. I mean, California is a funky place, right? It's even funkier place to do business.
Yeah, I don't do business in California. So if you're listening right now, leave me alone.
So I'm always interested. I'm especially interested in guys that are able to weave in and out of different areas, because people always ask me the rhyme and reason to the guests I have on the show, and I'm like, there's no rhyme or reason. If they're around the defense industry or they take their personal capability seriously, I like having them on, because those are guys that are usually responsible in business and in life. And, I like having them share their experiences, because maybe someone out there will listen and take something from it and learn something. But when there's guys that just aren't focused on one area and they're able to touch, whether it's the medical field, the jiu-jitsu field, and soft goods, clothing, and then, have the ability to do business successfully in all those areas. Like, I think that's amazing, because you have a different way of thinking. Some people can only see, like, I'm in the medical field and I'm just going to be there. And some people can't understand, like, if it makes money, it makes sense, right? Like, look at other areas, and if there's something that they enjoy, they can get their fingers in it and kind of, figure out how to make a buck doing it. Do you feel like there's some type of mental block some people have, or they don't look at things from a higher perspective? Because you're not even a doctor, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
Never even graduated college.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, is there a
I never would have thought I'd own 2 hospitals, a stem cell clinic, and 2 pharmacies. It just rolled into that, and that's the path that, I wouldn't say the path of least resistance, because there's been a lot of resistance, but yeah, very happy that we've ended up where we're at. We've been able to help thousands and thousands of people.
The stem cells are amazing and intriguing to me, and that's a podcast in and of itself.
Sure.
Yeah, and you got into that, and does it amaze you how that's a field similar to a lot of the marijuana grows and everything else that really was cutting edge and wasn't, I don't want to say accepted, is that the right term, Scotty? Like it came into vogue, I guess is a better way to put it, or became affordable to an extent, to where people could do it and it was available. But it wasn't widespread like it is now. Now it's starting to really percolate, and everybody's starting to say, well, stem cells are an option. Because I know when I tore my Achilles, I had like an 80% tear. They wanted to do surgery. I opted not for surgery, and the first thing they said was stem cells would be a good option. So it's really become one of those things that everybody knows about now, and I feel like that's the last 10 or 15 years, right? Like the rise of it? I don't know. I mean,
I've known about them for a long time, but just in like the last 3 years have we really started to move into it and really learn about it. It's a really amazing thing. Like I've seen some amazing things done with stem cells. It's funny, I tore my Achilles too, but before we knew about stem cells, so I had the whole surgery and everything done for me. But it's just technology is moving so fast, and America is so far behind the times. I broke my back and had to have back surgery. I blew out a disc and had it removed. And, a few years later, even with all my insurance and everything, it cost me about $24,000 for that insurance. And I later met the guy who is the owner of StemMedica, the largest stem cell research company in the world. We were both doing an emotional intelligence class actually here in Vegas, and I had met him there. I started talking to him, and the funny thing was, he's like, oh, well, you could have gone down to Tijuana, Mexico, and for about $36,000, they would have grown you a whole new disc. And I'm like, I paid $24,000. I had to have surgery. I couldn't walk for 2 years. Spent 8 months laying flat on my back to not I'm better. I can still walk and everything, but it's not the same as, oh, they could have grown you a new disc.
Right. Why do you think that is? Why are we so far behind? Is it the bureaucracy of medicine?
I think that, the critical mass for the U.S. like healthcare and big pharma is gone in one direction for so long, and that direction was pre-computers, right? So the fact that it takes so long for something to, the U.S. is like 10, 15 years behind in stem cells. Oh, yeah. You can just cross the border, and what we could do for you across the border is just light years ahead of what you can legally do here. I'm sure there are some doctors that, can do whatever they want to do, but, that behind the times. So it's, when something has so much momentum and so much, money, energy behind it, it's very hard for it to turn and go in a different direction.
Like turning a houseboat. Is that a function of the government? Is that a function of the law, or is it the medical community? Like, where does that ship begin to turn? I don't even know.
Well, I mean, hopefully this fact that we can get a vaccine out in like a week, right? Shows what's really possible to people, like the 5-minute mile almost, because, I'm no expert in legalizing drugs, right? Or we do drug trials at our hospital. We're doing one on MS right now. And, so I'm around some people who are very, very smart and to do this. So, the way I feel about it and my understanding about it is it's just that system has just been going the way it is so long, and it's very profitable for some people and some parties. So, getting it to change and getting it to go somewhere else, it gets really hard. So now we have a chance. Oh, we see this could get done, but we both know that, or any person should know that, just the best drug or the best treatment isn't necessarily what gets to market, right? It's who can afford to get it all the way through the system and get it out to market. There's also been situations where things are, a company might buy a smaller company that has a competitive product to shelf it. Right. So, a little bit of it is just, how business works. But I don't really prescribe to the fact that like, oh, there's people out there trying to, necessarily do evil stuff. I just think that the system is old. It just works the way it works, and it's hard to shift.
So some people everybody has these competing theories. Like when the whole OxyContin thing came out, and then there was that giant settlement. Some people say, like, how can they make money on that? And I'm like, they have to be making money 10 times over to be able to pay out, $1 billion in lawsuits or whatever it is. I mean, these drug companies make killer money, but they're always getting slapped with these lawsuits, it seems like, in a roundabout way. But am I right in saying they're absolutely murdering it, right? They're killing the market, I would think, right?
Some pharmaceutical companies are probably doing amazing. Other ones maybe not, not so much. I think it's like any business arena.
Right.
But I think if you look at that top big pharma, and we also have to talk about big insurance.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear people talking as much about big insurance as big pharma.
Right.
Sometimes big insurance controls what the price of a drug is, or who gets what drug or what treatment, not necessarily big pharma.
Yeah, I guess I never lumped the two together, big insurance and big pharma, because, some of the numbers they throw out there are huge, and they're always getting slapped with some type of lawsuit, and some disclaimer has to be added, and some situations. And the OxyContin one with the OCs, that was a big one. I was like, wow. I was like, they have to be making money though. I mean,
I remember when those things just flooded. Like all of a sudden, they were just everywhere. Like it was like, oh my god. Yeah, and
it was dangerous. And now, what everybody overdosing on? I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of frickin' pharma, but it's crazy how because you brought up the virus and being able to get mobilized enough to get the vaccination out there. It is impressive when you see something succeed really well in a short time period, and it's something that we haven't seen before, but we're capable of doing, and other countries are very capable of doing. And sometimes you wonder, or you scratch your head, are we doing it right here? Is something clogging the works, the pores, and how do you fix that? And I don't know if it's a function of medicine being just, like you said, slow and groggy at times, or is it the government, we just too slow to say, like, this is the right thing, this makes sense. There's a lot of different things. I've been in and out of hospitals my whole life, and I never really took the time to take a long look at some of those things, because I think I always viewed it as like, I don't know, they got to, like when they say trials, they got to be trying this, like there's a lab somewhere, there's guys, and you know what I'm saying? Like I always kind of trusted in the system, and then COVID happens and you start questioning everything, right? And that's kind of how it goes. I mean, I imagine.
I think right now, everybody should be questioning everything right now. Like,
yeah,
what in the heck?
I don't disagree. It's crazy. So you dance between all these businesses, and you have the ability to one day be wearing a hat and sitting in these rooms with these doctors and with these people and having these intelligent conversations. Do you ever find yourself in the situation where it's hard for you to change hats between all the businesses, or juggle between all of them? I mean, what advice do you give to?
Yeah, of course, it's always tough to shift gears, and my mom once gave me some advice: if you're juggling balls, keep an eye on the one that's closest to the floor. So that's something, I've always kind of kept in my mind. But, I have some businesses that are doing okay. They pay the bills. They keep people employed. They don't take up as much time. Right now, the stem cell lab, so our lab, we've got all our licensing, everything will be, online and able to create a whole plethora of different cellular therapies and treatments really soon here in the next couple of weeks. We've already started doing some trials. We're doing a multiple sclerosis trial down there right now, and we have access to some of the best scientists and the best doctors that really, they see our vision, they see what we want to do and where we want to go with it, and so it's been nice. It's like my business partner Ed Clay. I have two business partners, Ed Clay and Dedrick Perry, and Ed was MMA coach, when he was a purple belt. He had Nashville MMA, and he had more students than the two Brazilian black belt guys in there. He's a very intelligent guy and smart businessman, and he's been able to attract a team of people that really get his vision for healing and how to get people their lives back, basically.
There's something about stem cells that they're super cutting edge. I don't claim to know everything about them. For everybody listening that maybe doesn't know, what exactly is a stem cell?
Oh God, now you're putting
no. Just give me the civilian answer, so anyone doesn't know.
Well, so I am far from an expert in this too myself. We're actually working on starting up a documentary about stem cells, the whole thing, how it came about. So I'm looking forward. to that. But, stem cells, basically started out as, umbilical cords
Right.
or a type of a cell that could become anything. And, so from what I understand, it used to be, basically the people thought those were the best stem cells, but then there was cases of those cells becoming stuff you didn't want them to do. So I think the most famous case was a woman who had some cosmetic surgery done on her eyes. They thought it would heal to put these stem cells, and instead she grew like a piece of bone in a weird place on her eye. So now, though, they've been able to expand, kind of grow stem cells. They do it in hypoxia, which is similar to the same as a mother's womb. And they've also been able to modify the stem cells so that they have a better idea of, what they're, this is going in a knee, or this is going up the spinal cord. So there's different types of them, and they're able to program them now.
Yeah, I just want people to understand we're not talking about recycled piss over here, I mean, there's a science behind this because, some people might listen and not fully understand that you have all different types of cutting edge medicine out there, and there's no book anywhere, no manual that tells you what's the best thing for you in your situation and whatever it is you're going through. I think we take the advice of doctors, but I think it's important now with telemedicine coming in the way it is with everything, especially having gone through what I went through with the Achilles. I kind of bounced it off everybody, and whether you start questioning whether or not surgery is an option, what things you want to do to your body. I come from that old school powerlifting background that I know once you start fucking around with ligaments and certain things, I get nervous,
Sure.
Because you never get back that oomph that you once had. Because when someone goes in there and starts ripping tendons, now I was just dead set against it from the jump. But, I think there was a little bit of voodoo around stem cells initially, but I think a lot of that's going away as we see things like telemedicine and certain things come in, because I think the walls are starting to come down, as we talked about, around rehabilitation, rehabbing, and how rehab is done, especially in my lifetime. The last, 15 years since I played sports, I've seen rehab go from a barbaric level to now being so much better. We know more about hydration. We know more about so many things than we've ever known. As you were getting into this, did you get like this crash course education, or did you kind of know, or already have the vision of where you wanted to go with these services and what you wanted to do?
Well, originally what had happened, like how I got into this was, so my business partner, Ed, who's also been one of my best friends forever, met at a jiu-jitsu tournament, Hickson Gracie jiu-jitsu tournament in the 90s. And basically, he had blown out his knees training, and back then had a team doctor and got put on pain pills. Had trouble getting off pain pills. Then he heard about this stuff called ibogaine, which is this root from Africa that you can take, and it basically washes out your brain, and you can, he was free of opiate addiction in like 3 days. And so he thought, wow, America's behind the times, like really bad. And his mom was very sick at the time, and she had done what's called failed standard of care. And that means that none of the medications that her doctors worked anymore. So they kind of gave up on her. And so he went down the rabbit hole of, studying what was out there. And we found this hospital that had done more of this treatment called Coley's toxins. We actually have a documentary about Coley's toxins coming out in about 2 weeks, which was the first immunotherapy. And it's basically dead bacteria. And the dead bacteria hyperactivates the immune system. Well, so his mom was the second patient there. She came in a wheelchair. About 3 weeks later, she left walking, and she's been in remission, I think, 5 years, now.
Amazing.
And so for me, it didn't take too many of those type of stories. Of course, I love his mom, like she's my mom. And, our third patient came in a wheelchair, left walking. Now that happens so frequently at my hospital, like you don't even, people are just like, what, But again, the system in the United States, it's broken, right? There's a gap, and a lot of doctors, they don't want to tell people that they've run out of options. Sometimes running out of options means running out of insurance, So, but things have changed. When we were talking about figuring out the best treatment for people, we were in the process of opening our first hospital in the United States, called United Cancer Centers, and we were going to be leveraging the right to try law and working with these small biotechs that have very successful treatments that are years and years away, with that new law, they could request. And one of the things that we got in talk with what's the big IBM supercomputer that they have?
What's it called?
Why can't I think of the name?
I'll look it up.
Anyways, you'll think of it. So basically, we got access to that computer to where we would be able to literally search millions and millions of different medical records for cancer, different trials that have gone around worldwide, compare tumor markers, compare medical records, and see, okay, what's the best treatment for this person? What has gone. So back to what you were saying before, when's that going to change? I think, when public opinion, kind of pushes the pressure on it, and people can start to see, there are faster ways to get treatments and get things out there.
There's a couple of crazy supercomputers, not to cut you off, but I know the one you're referring to. I guess IBM has one that's Sequoia that's constantly.
No, that wasn't the one, but
no,
there's a big, huge one.
Yeah, I gotta. It's something like Al or something.
I think Hal is from.
But you're absolutely right. There is a gap, and I think there's no magic bullet that solves the issue, right? Like it's beyond just the medical field. It's probably somewhat politics that ties it up, and it's probably some people's fear that we can't just release something in 6 months, right? I think there's probably a lot of truth woven into all of that.
Sure.
What the level of testing is, and when they say like trials and all those things, I don't know what goes into that or what the time frame is for that. But I think it's probably a lot like, somewhere, between, do you want to buy a car that was made in 10 minutes or in an hour? I don't know. There's probably.
Well, at the same time, do you want to, hey, here's this Tesla that you could get right here.
Right.
But since everything has to be 10, 15 years behind, this is what you get over there.
Yeah, no, that's where it gets
imagine
frightening.
Computers. Imagine if treatment and medication, was like a computer. Like, what if you could say, oh, hey, look at this awesome laptop computer, this MacBook Pro or whatever that's available, but nope, sorry. All we got over here for you is this old Commodore 64 TRS-80,
Atari,
type computer that's, over here. So, in some areas of our life, we accept what technology does really quickly, but in the healthcare, in some ways, of course, testing and stuff has become way more advanced, but the process still seems to move and be very expensive.
You see it a lot in anti-aging too. It's tremendously relevant and prevalent in anti-aging, because even I can remember going back, I'm going to say about 5 years, you never saw a low T commercial.
Oh, right.
I mean, all that stuff, Scotty. You never saw any of that shit. Like now, the last 5 or 7 years, every other commercial now is some type of anti-aging formula, some type of anti-aging remedy, and that blows my mind, because I can remember being, probably high school into college, and anything remotely you did that was performance enhancing or anything in that regard or in that space was completely taboo. It was like no and witchcraft.
Right.
And now everybody has some anti-aging clinic, formula,
shampoo,
and I say it's been going on for years, because you had people that did their teeth, they did their hair, they did their this, they did some type of plastic surgery, and that's an extension of it to a point.
Sure.
So I used to always kind of laugh at that, and I was kind of like, wow, just even human growth hormone, how that's come in to the marketplace, it's insane. But I think there has been some leaps and bounds, but it's still kind of in pockets, little pockets here and there, and you have to be in the right areas. Like if you're in Miami, Vegas, LA, it's prominent. You go up to New England, you can't find some of those. They're hard to find, because they haven't quite filtered all the way up into those areas. So some areas might be a little stubborn geographically, right?
Sure.
And do you find those challenges when you're looking to open businesses and stuff?
Well, for the hospitals, we had picked some pretty specific places. You know, our second one was going to be in Nashville, which is kind of like the healthcare hub. You know, Vegas is a great place to do business. I was living here. Some of the rest of the team was living here at the time too. So that's kind of how we looked at it. At one time, I used to own a chain of retail martial arts equipment stores. You know, and you know, you learn a lot about location when you're in retail and stuff,
of course.
too. But you know, for us, it was just we wanted to make sure that we were in places that the national law that had changed, but also had very good state laws for us. And then, you know, of course, we're in Mexico because Mexico almost has like a right to try type system, you know, already. Like healthcare, the culture of healthcare between our two countries is just like
night and day.
Yeah, you know, like you know, the culture down there, like my staff is amazing. They're so caring. They hug all the patients. You know, like a little different in COVID, right? But you know, it's just a whole different feeling of type of caring that they have there. It's not so clinical. It's way more we have a family room where all the patients come and meet, you know.
It's weird here for healthcare. I mean, I feel like is it just driven by the buck or what they can get out of insurance companies? I mean,
it's a broken old system. I don't think you can pinpoint any one of those, you know, like, I don't think so, you know.
Do you think we should have universal healthcare?
I think there should be a safety net for everybody. Yeah, I really do. I mean, I've been somebody who's been really down and out and hadn't had money. So, you know, I think that it's, yeah, I mean, I think it should be a safety net for everybody.
I think they're definitely.
I don't think you should take away private health care either.
Yeah, I think they're definitely. My solution would have been, I think there definitely should be more cushion for emergency care, because most people who are down and out, they need some level of emergency care. They're not going to go unless it's an emergency, right? Because they can't afford to, right? So most people who don't have money aren't like, let me sign up for this $5,000 bill that I'm about to get, right?
Sure.
So I've been more a proponent of there should be some type of gap closure with emergency care, and you know, maybe it's like for the first 90 days your prescription costs are X, you know, because if you have a situation and you're down and out, maybe out of a job, maybe you're only working part-time, whatever the scenario is that you cannot afford health insurance, you're in a position where that could cripple you. That could really set you back for X amount of time. And I don't think that that's fair. And I don't think that's the intention. Like you said, it's an old broken system. So how do you fix that gap for emergency care, whether it's streamlining it in a way that people who check in and they have legitimate health problems. It's, you know, something that, you know, that was just unforeseen, a 25-year-old with an X or, you know, just something unforeseen, that we have some type of gap protection there. I don't know that we do. I've been through the healthcare system, and I can say that I've never seen it, you know, that maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't. I've had insurance. I haven't had insurance. I've been in just like anybody else, but I would love to see that, especially on the prescription side too, because that's crippling for a lot of people. And I would think to a young person that's maybe trying to get started, or maybe even trying to be entrepreneurial and start their own business, and maybe just there's a year or two in there where they don't have coverage or they don't have that type of protection, because sometimes there's a lot of holes in prescription plans, and that can really set you back. And that's my, you know, blanket. I'm no healthcare expert, and it's probably my weakest area of policy, but I think that we could do better in that space. I do think there should be private.
I mean, I just think that, you know, love everybody as much that if something happened to them, yeah, there should be a way. You just never know. I mean, for so many cancer patients, I think bankruptcy is like one of the number one reasons people file bankruptcy is because of health issues and healthcare problems. When I had to have my surgery, like I had good health insurance. My employees had good health insurance, but I don't think any of them could have afforded all of the extra fees and what it ended up costing me. It definitely would have been, you know, struggle, long payment plan for them.
And especially with a back, it's like crippling. Like you could be, you know, if you don't see it all the way through, you know, and get the full treatment, the full course of treatment that you need, you're left like for the rest of your life in some type of, debilitating condition where you're fighting to
take care of your back,
get out of bed and, you know, go to the bathroom and everything. I mean, literally, back is nothing to screw around with. There's certain parts of you that you just need, and back's one of them. So you get, you know, knee deep in the healthcare stuff, but then you transition and you still have your hands on the pulse with the jiu-jitsu stuff and with the gi company and all that. And I'm amazed that you're able to go from that, a room full of doctors, and then boom, you're picking out fabrics.
Well, I got into the gi business a long time ago, and it's more of a passion project right now. Lucky Gi is my gi company, and I make gis that I'm excited about. So I did a gi with Maynard Keenan. We just did the UFC. We did a 28-year anniversary gi. It was awesome. I got to go give one to Hoist himself, and first time they'd ever done a collaboration with making an actual UFC gi. So it was super cool that they picked me to be at all the gi companies out there now. They picked me. So
Hoist is interesting. I've met him at Chacho. He's a super gun guy now.
Super, yeah. Oh, he had some funny things to say when I just hung out with
him.
Yeah.
He's like all about self-defense now, everything. He's on ranges. He's at Chacho. He's everywhere.
Yep. Well, think about where he came from. Like I lived in Brazil for 3 years, man. It's a scary, it can be it's a very beautiful place, but it can also be really scary, for sure. So, we had a guy got murdered in our car in Brazil, so got robbed quite a few times.
He's got his son fighting now. I think Bellator, right?
I think so. Yeah,
he's fighting in Bellator now, and he's just become such a great spokesperson for the self-defense community and just in general. I mean, just having him around these different genres is fun to see, and I feel like he doesn't age too. He's another one. Like I feel like he's looked the same as that fucking video in UFC 1. I feel like he's like when I see him in person, I'm like,
I mean, even Elio always looks so good for his age.
Oh
too,
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and he was what 91, and he was still practicing. Is what
he was up there. He's better than me, man. I feel so broken at 50. I don't really want to train much.
It's crazy. I went to GST and I trained, under some of the Gracie methodology. It really is a little bit of like a go with the flow, play dead system, so I can understand their survival rate for their bones and everything else. But I in my time I've had the crap beat out of me, so I don't know how they all still say looking so young but still move so good too.
Yeah,
it's kind of wild.
I mean, look at Hoyler. Like, think about how many huge guys that guy fought, let alone probably getting beat up by every bigger Gracie his whole entire life, but he's still like. Yeah. I mean, I when I refereed Eddie Hoyler and I saw his knee go, I was like, he's not going to be able to walk. He's fine.
It's wild.
I would have been on a stretcher.
How do they get that level of flexibility? I mean, I know you don't have the answer. It's just fucking crazy to me to see. Some of these guys, the way they come,
I don't have it, so I can't tell you how to get it.
Yeah, the way they come out of arm bars and the way they're able to just, I don't know. It's bananas to me. I get crippled and broken every fucking day, but I mean, just moving around. But you do the gi company, Lucky Gi. And that's, like you said, a passion project. I mean, I think it has to be, right? But it's an extension of your jiu-jitsu and an extension of really something that you love to do. And if you're able to fuse those two together, I think you find a certain level of not just happiness, but you're able to make money while you're making fun, right? Like while you're having fun because you legitimately enjoy those things. People sometimes ask me, they're like, why podcasting? I'm like, because I like meeting interesting people. I like shooting the shit with them. And I feel like there's nothing better than an hour, 90-minute conversation with somebody to get to know them. And I feel very satisfied, very fulfilled after I have that. Why not make money on that? And if it makes money, it makes sense. And if you're able to do that and they're able to get their message out there, then everybody wins, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like if you can find that, whether it's by owning a gi company, owning a gym, being able to affect the lives like, what Coach Casey Halstead does, as an extension of 10th Planet and his gyms, being able to affect people in a positive way and have a good experience with them that you both share, that's a win, right? That's a win-win.
Win-win. Always looking for the win-win.
Yeah.
Build bridges, right?
Building bridges. And I feel like that might be a little bit of a lost art, amidst all the technology and everything that's come on the last 20 years, 15 years strong, that everybody's lost that little bit of a personal touch, I guess, is the way it is. I mean, I know this past Christmas I received a card and a little gift from a firearms company, handwritten, and I was like, this is just such a lost art, amongst people, and that's why one of the reasons I love the jiu-jitsu, I mean, I'm a hobbyist. I'm a jiu-jitsu hobbyist. I enjoy it. I'm not there like, pressing to be world class or anything, but I just love the warm welcoming, like you said, the hug, the little extra, it's great to see you on the mats today, that fun that comes with it. And it's such an open community, and I feel like we're losing a little bit of that in society every day because we're worried about what Billy's doing on Facebook down the street. We're worried about, what this one maybe has or doesn't have around the corner, or whatever Sally posted. And some people just lose such sight of what's important, and that's something that's a little scary to me. So finding that through Lucky Gi and finding that ability to turn a little bit of a hobby, a little bit of a passion into a moneymaker, hopefully, right? You hope, is a win, is a huge home run, psychologically too, right?
It's great. I decided I wanted to make my own gis like early on, back in the days, like when I first started training jiu-jitsu. You either had to buy like these really big overfit judo gis,
so bulky,
or you would have to wait for somebody to come from Brazil with a duffel bag full of gis. And when you're the white belt, blue belt, then all the higher belt guys, they get first picks, and like whatever's left is like whatever you get. But I used to hang out a lot with BJ Penn at the time, and he was coming back and forth from Brazil a lot more than I was, and always had new gis. And we just shot the shit, and I just finally said, hey, I want to create like my own gi. And it took a while. I went down to Brazil, and I learned a lot there. They never expected me to speak Portuguese there, so I could sit around in factories and listen to what people were saying. And I had a camera phone on my my cell phone, like a Nokia, one of the first ones, and I would be in there taking pictures. And I saw what happened to Ed, my friend, now my business partner, with Gameness when he was using a Brazilian factory, and they just stole his brand.
Yeah.
And I said, whoa, this gi that I'm about to come out with is so different. If I do it down here, which is what I really originally wanted to say, yeah, it's a Brazilian gi, right? And so then I didn't do that. So then I ended up flying to Pakistan and taking all that knowledge and all the patterns and all the gis that I had, and really like teaching a factory in Pakistan how to make the gis the same way they were making the gis in Brazil, plus add all of my changes, onto it. I came from a pro snowboarding, skateboarding, like that, era too. So I, as the first one, I wanted my friends to have their own signature model gis, so Rafael Lovato and Jeff Glover and all those guys had their own, signature gis.
That stealing of gi patterns and that stealing of IP with gis is common. I've heard that story before from people getting started in the business, or whether it's a fabric or a pattern even used in the no-gi and the rash guards. I've heard of this. Like it becomes almost like people take your formula, whatever it is, for how they're making stuff. And in the tactical industry, you see it with the bags. If you look at like one bag company, they start to all look the same because they're all
it's called R&D, right? Rip off and duplicate. Right? I've had it out with some newer gi brands. First of all, I tried to help every gi brand out there that ever needed help, not get ripped off and go through all this stuff. But yeah, I've had people like, accuse me of like, oh, you copy, but I'm like, huh? Like I did this like 10 years ago. What are you talking about?
There's some technology that like is, I guess you'd say, like unwritten open source, right? Like like some technology has been around. Yeah, it's been around forever. And then there's people that covet certain forms of tech and certain forms of IP. And I think in that world, I've heard a couple of stories, and I kind of compare it to the backpack bag world, because if you go and you lined up 10 tactical backpacks, you're going to find 7 things that are absolutely the same in them, and then you find out that 6 of them are made in the same factory.
That's what I was going to say. I used to, because I worked in China for 8 years, so like, you just, in China, they don't care. Like they just don't, they'll copy anything. Every one of my Lucky Gis has been ripped off by my own manufacturer in China and sold on their version of Amazon, whatever it's called, over
like Wish
there.
Or whatever the fuck.
I don't even know what it's called. I want to advertise for them, even if I did. But so it's just, that's just culturally. Like even when I call them out on it, like they just don't care. So one time I had a line of bags made for OTM, and we had found the old Ogio factory, who I love their bags, and they just let us steal any design, or like what, they didn't look like their bags, but they're like, oh, you can use their molds, you can use their wheels, you can use whatever. They don't care. So it's not surprising at all. But some stuff like a gi, like, ooh, I put the karate gusset into gi pants for for jiu-jitsu for the first time, because BJ used to say, oh, I can't open my legs all the way up, in guard. So, but now every brand uses that. So I stole it from somewhere else,
Yeah, it's like there's similar stories in even the knife community. I don't know how deep you want to go down this rabbit hole, but when Ernie Emerson and they designed the wave pattern for like karambits and stuff and the ability to draw out, so many companies have, I guess you'd say, like you said, rip off and duplicate some form of fashion of that and put it into their own batter and cook it up, and then there you go. And it becomes that type of patenting and that type of, it's got to be frustrating, because I would think, it's lawless in China, it's lawless, say, in India, wherever, and then they bring it over to the United States, and it's like, how do you go after them, and do you spend 10,000 to chase 1,000? That's what it starts to become, right? I mean, if I'm trying to sort through this, do you spend 20 to go after 2?
I think you just got to try to stay ahead of them. Like it's gonna happen. It's definitely gonna happen.
It's one thing if you're dealing with millions, but sometimes the multiples aren't there to say, oh fuck, I'm gonna go after this guy. Because I know a kid.
Almost never. Yeah.
I know a kid. I'm not gonna say his name because he does well. He makes a lot of money. He does T-shirts, and I don't want to say too much, but the designs he does on the shirts definitely violate some level of copyright, right? With the characters he uses and everything. But he does such small amounts. He's like,
I don't care.
He flies under that de minimis. So he's kind of operating. And I think that happens a lot in the rash guard community, because the rash guard community is still like the fucking Wild West. I mean, Scotty, when you look at it, it's like you see some of the designs. I'm like, that's definitely freaking not kosher, right?
I'm out of the rash guard business. I was in there for a while, but yeah, absolutely. It's definitely the Wild West.
Wild West.
And now you have like these, online sites where you can get anything printed like cheap and stuff, and you can just do about anything.
Yeah, there's a bunch that are like, the designers will contribute designs and you can buy them. And if you read the disclaimer, it's really interesting. The disclaimer will be, and you can put it on anything. So you're 1000% correct. I mean, you can literally put it on a pair of jeans. So they'll put a disclaimer that's like, we're not responsible for, like, if you ordered a mass quantity or one, somebody coming after you to be like, that's my.
If you stole someone else's trademark, it's not their. They're not
liable.
Police. They're not police.
They're just printing it.
Right.
It's crazy.
So, well,
right?
Can't blame them for not wanting to get sued, right?
Right. It's fucking crazy. I got to get into contract law. That's the ticket, right? I mean, but so the gi thing, you get the doctor thing, the stem cells, you get into Lucky Gi, and along the way you become a freaking black belt. It's wild, right? And how does that begin?
It was a slow ride to black belt for me, man. 17 years.
Wow.
Yep.
I'm not going to be far behind you. I'm telling you.
Well, as long as you get there, right?
Right. I mean, so 17 years, how many gyms and how many coaches?
Well, that was the thing, is like all over the world, So I don't really even count this part as my journey, but like, my friend Rob Carter, he's the one that got me into jiu-jitsu. He was already a blue belt, I think, when UFC 2 came out or something. And he was training with one of the Gracies, Rodrigo's dad. I'll probably say his name wrong, but it's not Helson, but it's like Halson. And I used to drive down there and train there, and it was $60 a class. You got to drill 3 moves, and that was it. It was an hour drive. But soon after, I moved up to Northern California, and I started training at House. And so I got all my fundamentals all the way up to purple belt under Half. But in the middle of that, when training there, I started going down to Brazil, and then eventually moved down to Brazil. So I started going down to Brazil in '99, moved there in 2001. Lived there for like 3 years straight, and no one was promoting me being the gringo from Brazil. And when I was in Brazil, I did some crianching. I trained at a lot of different places. I went from one end of all the way up to Manaus. I trained with Fredson Paixão and Jacare and those guys up there, and then I went all the way down to the south to like Florianopolis.
Wow!
And I trained everywhere in between.
See, it was different then. I mean, there's so much there to unpack, but back then, the jiu-jitsu, number one, wasn't as widespread, right? So you had these kind of Gracie garage type gyms and these small gyms, and you get started under a very respected lineage. But when you traveled around even, which made it more difficult, it was kind of pre-internet. So it was kind of like a bear shit in the woods. If you didn't see it or you didn't have it like to be able to explain to like your next coach, hey, I trained here, but I went here, I went here, I went here. It was all word of mouth, and you had to like, see how the guy rolled and so on. So the journey took even longer, right? But at the same time, you're better for having done that, of course, because you're getting the seasoning along the way. And you hope that you can train continuous all the way through, which is always hard, right? And it makes it difficult. But it's hard to stay with one coach in one gym because life kind of changes around you. And the jiu-jitsu belt is one that takes a little bit of time. It's not one of those things like, church karate or mall karate where, in 3 years you're going to be, okay, you're a ninja. Go and go and ninja, and it takes time, and I think you need that seasoning. I think you need that traveling, and I think one of the things that's getting lost a little bit in the modern jiu-jitsu and MMA, karate, whatever you want to call it, mixed martial arts, is I say this sometimes to some young guys. Once you progress to maybe blue under ex-coach here, maybe under Casey, go take a trip down to like Miami and train a little bit. If you can't afford to go out of country, go travel around, go to some different gyms and get that little bit of seasoning, because you start training with different people, you start going in different gyms. One, you start to for your own self see your level that you're at, and two, you develop different relationships in jiu-jitsu and see different styles. Sure. And not only just in jiu-jitsu, but in all mixed martial arts. I mean, you see that here a little bit because Vegas is a little bit the epicenter of fighting, so you're able to go from maybe 10th Planet to Extreme, but you're still in that same pond of people, plus we have so many people coming through. But at the same time, there's something to be said about hitting some of the different areas, even in this country at this point, because of how widespread it's become and getting that season.
I mean, now there's jiu-jitsu everywhere. So you can, and it's so many guys from Brazil are here.
Oh, yeah.
The talent level is incredible. But yeah, back then there just wasn't even that many. I used to ride I used to ride the bus for like an hour, 15 minutes when it was too cold to ride my motorcycle to go train.
It's crazy.
So, but now in that same stretch right there of Northern California where I used to live in Mountain View, there's probably like 8 jiu-jitsu schools right there.
Yeah, and it's blown up in such a way that I said this to Coach Casey. I said, do you think there's like a jiu-jitsu bubble out there, where there's just so many?
There might have been one, but it seems like this, lockdown COVID's, crushing out a little bit of that, unfortunately. But
it's crushing out a little bit, but I think also too people's heightened awareness to want to be more capable and train has bumped it a little bit for some of the more credible gyms and stuff like that. People want to train. Like we saw that with gun sales. You know what I mean?
Of course,
you can't touch a round of ammunition. You can't get 9mm for under 80 cents. And at the same time, people are like, you know what, if I'm in a crowd, I want to be able to handle myself. So I think to the credible gyms and the people doing the right type of marketing, the right type of branding, and pushing the ability to train. One of the things that's always been lacking in jiu-jitsu, in my opinion, is the ability to translate it to self-defense. It's always been recognized in the octagon, but I think, the ability to say, like, this will serve you in the street.
How long ago did you start training?
The first time I ever trained any martial art?
No, jiu-jitsu. You said jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Jiu-jitsu, probably about 4 plus.
4 plus, yeah. So, I mean, I totally get it. I agree with where you're coming from, but I think it's like more lost, because when I first started training jiu-jitsu, it was all self-defense. Well, it was called Vale Tudo, right? Okay. It wasn't called MMA yet. And, we used to literally have guys, Gracie Challenge, come off the street to fight Half on any given Tuesday.
But on a mat.
Yeah, on a mat. Some of them rolled outside afterwards.
So,
but it was on a mat, but it was way more self-defense oriented than it was very fight, I would say, street defense oriented compared to if you go train at a jiu-jitsu school right now, it's bump fists, sit on your butt. Not always, but it's very much a sport game now than it was back then. To me, it was a fight back then. Back then, you cultivated the dirty tricks, you cultivated the dirty moves, the neck cranks, the whatever. It was like, hey, by the way, if you're in this position, you can do this. Yeah.
No, yeah. I don't disagree with you. I just I think it would be great. And I talk to coaches about this a lot. about incorporating, guys were standing up more than, I know exactly what you're saying. If you go back and you watch those older videos, and I've watched them, through the years of doing other martial arts, guys were standing more than they were starting from a standing position. You get guys now and you put them in a self-defense situation that have always come up in that, I guess you'd say, mat-based training. You stand up outside on the concrete, they can't sit down and pull guard. They're like, you do that, you're going to get kicked in the teeth. It becomes a little bit of a different animal. So, it's interesting to see the evolution as more competition-based jiu-jitsu has come in, and especially the teaching of it, that you'd like to see some level of self-defense, come into it, come back to it, I guess is what I'm getting at. Because I think you have to incorporate all of it, because I think all fighting and all self-defense is a management of distance, right? So it's all based on the distance. I mean, jiu-jitsu works great if you're close. If you're far away, what if the person's carrying a gun? What if they're carrying a knife? What if they have a bat? What if they have, so you have to go through that Kim's game, or go through that mental exercise of everything. You can't just sit down and say, okay, let's go. Let's fight.
But one thing I do like about, I agree with you 100%. One thing I do like about jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu tournaments, in my experience from some other types of martial arts competitions, is like, you do have that fight that you're in a real fight. Yeah. So at least when you get that fight or flight panic out, right? So you do, you have almost suffocated. You have felt some really pain. If you're at a good gym, you've been punched, like that's one thing for me. It's like, oh, you've never been punched. You know what I mean? So, and at one point, jiu-jitsu went from being, when I started training at House, it was like, okay, if you think the guy's a wrestler, he's going to do this. This is what Wing Chun guys are doing. This is what Kung Fu guys are doing. This is what a karate guy is going to do. This is what a boxer is going to do. And so there would be days like, put on the boxing gloves, and whoever the best boxer was there, hopefully you weren't getting boxed by BJ, and you'd get hit. You would practice these things. So, Henry Akins, Hickson's fastest black belt, he talks about how, jiu-jitsu went from jiu-jitsu in a fight versus any other martial art to jiu-jitsu to beat jiu-jitsu. And it's a big, big difference when you start looking at how, so when I first started training jiu-jitsu, when Henry started training jiu-jitsu, I was walking in there to learn how to street fight, how to defend myself in a street fight. And so it's now become like how to do human chess is the way I see it.
100%.
Because I've gone into gyms, recently, and I was training with a purple belt not too long ago, and I just showed him that there was a heel hook there, and he freaked out. I'm like, dude, I'm just showing you. I didn't put this on you. And then I did a little sweep where I kind of reaped his knee, and he screamed at me for reaping his knee. And I'm like thinking, man, back when I was a white belt, like the best passes did reap the knee. The best sweeps did reap the knee, like it was just such a different type of environment. And it's better now for staying safe and not getting hurt and not being injured, not messing up those ligaments like we talked about. But like, to me, the fight element of it is just gone. You're not there.
Yeah, no, that's the best way to put it. It's turned a little bit into that human chess element, and a little bit into that gamesmanship. Like, you can game it now a little bit, and if you know a little bit about what you're doing, maybe you're in that 4 or 5 year window, and maybe you sat through a few seminars, you can at least protect yourself, especially on a mat, because you start to know, this is a terrible term, but you start to know the safe spaces, right? The safe places you can be in, where you can kind of control the time, and you start to play the clock and everything else, instead of trying to play the man and play it differently, as if it's like, hey, let's start standing and let's go.
I mean, Half sent us all into our first tournaments with, I didn't know any of the points. He said, hey, you tap, you win. You get tapped, you lose. Don't nobody tap, who cares? That was it.
That was it.
Go win some matches, that was it.
So what do you think, as a little bit of an old schooler of, say like Gordon, and how he kind of sets up his matches, and it's like, it's all about the rule set and everything else.
It's super smart. He's a professional athlete. He's a professional athlete, right? It's a completely different thing. I mean, Gordon's amazing.
It's amazing.
Gary Tonin is one of my good friends. I think I was his first sponsor, if not one of his really close to being his
Another
first
wizard.
sponsor. Yeah, you know, super good guys, and they've taken stuff to a whole another level.
I love that they're bringing the money element and a little bit of the they
Thank
know
God.
they know what they're doing. I've talked to them. They know what
I
they're
used to get
doing.
beat up for less than $500.
Yeah,
you know,
and I've had like Nicky Rod on the show. Like I've talked to them. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're smart. They're bringing that
super intelligent guys.
They're bringing that element to it, and that's what it needs. It needs that awareness. And I think with the rise of ESPN Plus and the ability, you know, how Dana needs so much content for the Fight Pass and for all that, I think that's a huge opportunity for them to just get out there and start doing as many tournaments. And you have SUG and you have all these different areas now for them to compete. I think that adds longevity to the UFC, and as guys maybe transition out of their career, maybe they can go back to competitive jiu-jitsu.
That is a very cool thing too. Yeah, we've seen quite a bit of that, which I think is great.
What do you think of the celebrity fighting?
I mean, I love Pride, so I love it. You know what I mean? Like, I can see both sides of it, but I think spectacle fighting. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, some guys put it down. It's funny, like and I call it celebrity fighting, but recently we had that card with Tyson and Roy Jones, which was interesting, right? But I think that's a way to, I guess, this is going to sound interesting. I think that's a way to kind of shut up some of the talkers on the internet or people that come out of the woodwork. And I'm not directing this at Jake Paul and Logan Paul. They're actually athletes if you look at them, despite what people think. But I do agree with, Roy Jones got on I think it was Shannon Sharp's vlog or what he does. And he said, the thing with Jake Paul is people have to understand, yes, he's 2-0 professionally, and he used air quotes, but he hasn't fought a professional fighter yet.
Yeah.
He's fought a couple of celebrity professionals, until he gets in the ring and he fights someone that's got 5, 6, 7 fights under their belt, legitimate boxing matches, we won't know what he's capable of. And I think that was one of the best statements that we've heard. And I know he's come out and he's challenged some people, but I think these celebrity cards are very interesting for the sport and very interesting for guys who are, whether it's in the merchandising or around the sports, because it draws people in and it brings awareness to it. If you're going to buy a pay-per-view or a viewing experience and you're going to see maybe 2 power lifters or 2 YouTube stars, whatever it is, but maybe it's anchored by a couple of legitimate ones in there, I think it just brings more audience, right?
Everybody loves a good fight, and everybody loves to see a shit talker get shit kicked out of them. So,
right.
Like, I don't, and for me, like back in the day, Pride, to see some of those crazy fights, the pro wrestler guys try to fight the real guys. Like,
oh yeah,
that was cool, and the mismatching and stuff. So I think it's cool, like it's more fighting. I like fighting.
At least with Pride, they had like a lot of catch guys, and it was guys that kind of did know what they were doing, and that was Pride in the old days was fucking long.
It's also a great way for people to see the difference, right? You know what I mean? You got
that's true.
Somebody who's like an internet boxer guy, and like, let's see how he does, against a real.
Does it trickle over to other sports though? That's what I was thinking about. Because what I was thinking,
wasn't there like a reality kind of game show where you got to play a pro in some sport or something like that, and get dunked on by some awesome basketball guy, or you had to try to like break through the line in football?
Yeah, I think there was.
If not, someone could probably pick that one up.
I think they do a little bit of that too in sports science. But what I was thinking, Scotty, is like, wouldn't it be interesting if that caused a little bit of a trickle over into a couple other sports, maybe?
What if it trickled over into politics? How great would that be?
Oh my God, that would be awesome and terrifying at the same time.
Yes, it would.
If you could debate some of those people too, that would be amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think some people in the beginning were kind of like, what is this? This is going to turn it into a circus. But I think I do think that you can polish up a something like that a little bit, and I think it all bases on the undercard and what that card looks like and how you shape it.
I think celebrity fighting is cool, like people need to get punched in the face a little bit these days. Everybody's,
I didn't like it when it was.
And,
I didn't like it when it was celebrity death match or whatever it was. Whatever that was. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
I like it when it's anchored with something legitimate, like 1 or 2 legit fights that you want to see, someone who actually takes the training seriously, someone who actually puts the time in, and I think that has a place. But I would like to see it a little bit with more MMA style rules. not just boxing. I'd like to see it's.
Or even, Jeff Glover back in the day called out Shaq.
Yeah.
How crazy was Shaq's like a purple belt or something like
Yeah.
that, right? I mean, he's huge. Like, you got little Jeff,
That's crazy.
140 pounds.
I don't think you'll see that because the weight thing becomes it becomes dangerous at that point, for a number of reasons. If you've ever rolled with anyone that you're giving 100 pounds to, it's
tough, but Jeff definitely has. He's
tremendous. What do they say? What's the unwritten rule? If you're belted, isn't there a theory out there that for every 20 pounds it becomes a color? It can.
Yeah, I mean, and then
black, all bets are off.
These little guys that just can, smash dudes that are.
I'm not saying like Joe Benavidez, I'm coming to see you, but I mean, I think there's something to that, right?
Yeah, of course. You can't say that size and strength don't mean anything, especially once you add a little bit of technique even in there. So
I feel like there's a tipping point. Like if you're a blue belt or purple belt, like you're in that Shaq space and you have the size, it's gonna make up some ground.
Oh yeah, if he's a legit purple belt and that much bigger, 200 pounds bigger, probably. So
you think he's legit?
He's an athlete, man. He knows how to learn. Like, I don't see why he couldn't be.
I think he's more legit than some.
Yeah.
Because of those factors, and I think he does take the craft seriously.
What's legit, dude? Like I came from the Ralph Gracie school of you couldn't get your blue belt till you could tap every white belt. It didn't matter if they were bigger than you or smaller. It was like that's so you're a smaller guy, like. And you couldn't like it. I don't know. It just seems like nowadays in some places, and maybe that's not completely correct, but you just show up and you start getting belted.
Jiu-Jitsu's done a good job though of mitigating that in many ways because there is that pride component, and there's too many guys with ego that have some color that are like no, like they're just not on my watch type guys.
Sure, thank God.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I do think that. Some martial arts obviously have a little bit looseness in how they prescribe and what they give their guys, but I think jiu-jitsu's done a pretty good. Like I don't know almost anyone in my circle that's got a blue belt under 2+ years. You know what I mean? Which is a long commitment.
Oh yeah,
of training a couple days a week.
Yep.
I
mean, jiu-jitsu. There's no fake in jiu-jitsu, right?
There isn't, but there's always that one guy that ends up on YouTube, right? There's always that one guy that you come across in your journey. Have you ever seen anything like that in a gym? I'm yet to see it. I want to see it happen once.
And what do you mean?
Live. Like someone who comes in and is like, I'm a black, one of those call-outs, like one of those epic.
That's how it used to be all the time.
Oh, fuck.
We used to have guys. I remember the first time like I ever really realized like, oh my God, jiu-jitsu works. So Half and Kurt Osiander were my instructors. Bobby Southworth was there at the same time, mid-90s. And, guys would walk in off the street, and we were right near Moffett Air Force Base.
Right.
And Half's thing always was you had to, like, beat a white belt before you could fight him, And he always would pick the smallest white belt that he was confident would kick someone's ass.
Right.
And so I was probably like the 150s back then, maybe 160, and I got to fight this big Ranger guy that came in, like all jacked up. And it was textbook, shoot, double leg, pass, mount, back, you know what I mean? And I was jiu-jitsu, like when I really realized it worked. So we would see a lot of that, for a long time, like BJ, BJ had to or got to go against Frank Shamrock when Shamrock came in to challenge Half and stuff. And so, that's how it was. We would have guys come in. We would have guys come in claiming they were from other jiu-jitsu schools. We had judo guys come in, test their things. We had karate guys come in, and we always had that open door policy. But other than Frank Shamrock, nobody ever made it past a white belt that I remember. So not when I was there.
Yeah, the Shamrocks were interesting, and I was talking about this with somebody. We were talking about wrestling. I think I was talking to John Poppy about it. But we were talking about what's his face, Dan Severin, and how he would stack up even today, and what that would look like, because some of those guys were of a wrestling background, a little bit of catch wrestling thrown in there and different stuff. It wasn't quite jiu-jitsu. I think some of the disconnect looking back is some of those guys didn't know how to finish. One thing jiu-jitsu taught you was over time, once you get progressed to blue and a little past it, you start to learn some real good creative finishes, and you're able to finish from different areas on the mat. And that was always, one of the skills when you look back through the years of like Ronda, certain people, they could finish from anywhere. I mean, they could hit their move from you gave them an inch, they took a mile,
Right.
you know? And I think that's what makes you that's when you turn the corner from just maybe a casual practitioner to really honing that craft and becoming, you know, next level good, you know, when you can hit an arm bar from anywhere, or when you can hit, you know, a back take from, I mean, you look at like Gordon is a great, like the way he snakes around you, like you blink and it's over. It's, you missed it. So I think when you get to that point, nobody's safe, right? I mean, I think that's really the number one thing. But the guys that come out of the woodwork sometimes and end up on the internet and they say, you know, I'm a ninja belt from this, or, you know, I think they, if they keep tight wraps on how people are promoted or the timing, I think, you know, that's going to keep the sport clean, you know, I mean, for lack of better words, right? Like keep it pure.
I mean, well, anything could be fake on the internet, right? But
True.
In jiu-jitsu, like two guys roll on the mat, like you say you're a black belt, like we're going to know if you're a black belt. You know?
You're going to know pretty quickly. And that's one of the things that I think keeps jiu-jitsu pure.
Sure.
And plus the way you can drill it, the way you can drill it at that full speed, you know what I mean, Scotty? Like that's a difference maker in that game. You can't, I don't care what anybody tells me, you can't box at full speed all the time. You can't do Muay Thai at full speed all the time because, yeah, you can spar, but can you go full speed 3-4 days a week like you could with jiu-jitsu? You see, because you have the tapping and you mitigate some of your damage in some ways because of the close proximity. So I think that's what keeps the pureness. Like someone could walk in and say, yeah, I'm 10 years a boxer. Can you fake it for 3 minutes? You might be able to. More so in that than you would be able to in 5-minute round, I think. I think, anyway. Someone could probably debunk me, but...
I mean, boxing's a pretty technical sport too, but yeah, I mean, you know, it keeps it real. You know, like someone could stand there shadow boxing and look really,
hella
really good, but doesn't mean their timing's good. Doesn't mean, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they know how to slip. It doesn't mean, you know, and it depends, you know, the level of coaching.
As soon as you touch somebody,
yeah,
you know, I mean, that's the thing about jiu-jitsu. It's so much contact, which is why, like, I think all like police and people like, and why I think it's so good, like for self-defense is that, you know, you learn the body and you get so close to that fight, you know, where your adrenaline is really going and you have to really control yourself so that when you are in those situations, I mean, I feel like jiu-jitsu prepared me for a lot of situations,
confrontational
like
situations, for sure,
and getting out of them, you know, like I've had some scary ones, being all over the world and stuff. So I think that really, you know, does that. But you know, you get a different type of confidence also when you can kind of size somebody up and look at somebody and look at a situation. You're like, okay, this person's coming this way, I'm redirecting that way, you know, like it
helps in the boardroom too. I mean, it gives you a certain amount of confidence. People used to say, you know, I weightlifted and powerlifted my whole life, and people used to ask me, like, you know, how do I get started in that, or I want to do that, and, you know, what's the trickle over? And I always said, it feels great to get a workout in the morning and you feel better about yourself, you feel clear, but also when you step into business settings, when you're put together and you feel like, you know, your nutrition is on, you're training regularly and even getting on the mats, you have a certain amount of confidence. And I think that's you can't put a price on that. I think, you know, I think that there's something there. I don't know how else to put it.
For sure something, you know. Well,
somebody should write a book.
I mean, I think that there's a book, The Fighter's Mind, Sam Sheridan, I think is a really good one. But you know, I think there's just something, and I've seen this so many times because I've introduced so many people to jiu-jitsu, you know, I currently have the oldest jiu-jitsu website on the internet. We were the third, but the other two have been out of business for years. And you can just see somebody, they just start carrying themselves differently. You know, like when you know you can walk into a room and handle I mean, it used to be with jiu-jitsu was like superpowers. You could walk in the bar. If I don't know you, I'm going to win a fight. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to get in a fight. I don't know you. You know, now a lot more people train jiu-jitsu. I don't know everybody, but, you know, like.
You almost have to now assume everybody in the room has some level of MMA training. That's what I said to someone.
At least their backyard with their buddy, if nothing else.
I said that to someone about self-defense. They asked me, they go, what do you think if I take a couple classes? Like, no, I mean, listen, we were talking about this recently with, even Dan and I were talking about this because he was talking about bars. We were talking about this. I think in order to aptly prepare yourself for society today, I think you have to assume everybody has somewhere between 1 year and 18 months of some type of MMA or some type of formal training. And if you go into it with that mindset, I think you really cross over or become more capable or become a cut above when you get in. I know Henner does this interesting thing, and this is where I'm drawing this from, is he does like a drawing on a whiteboard. He's like, this percentage and this percentage have this belt. I don't think you should get caught up in that, but I think what you should assume is whether it's a bar, nightlife, any scenario that you're in, overseas, everything, you should assume that whoever you're dealing with has some type of training up to a certain level, whether it's 18 months, whatever you want to call it. But if you get into that 3-year range or 4-year range or 5-year range, you're probably in a much smaller percentage.
Right.
I feel safe saying that. You don't get in
fights with people like that, right? Like the guy's been training 5 years, man. The last thing he's looking for is a fight at a bar.
It's a different mindset. That's when the mindset starts to cross over. It's like when you win a couple bar fights in college, you start to want to bar fight everybody, right? Like you become that guy. I think that guy. Yeah, I think everybody was at one point. But then I think when you realize you know nothing and you're beating up on people that have zero, less than zero, you're going against the negative percentage people because they're drunk too and they don't know what's going on. You start to say, okay, I want to get better at this, and your challengers go up and and so on, and then the game plays out. So I think if you go into life assuming that what I said earlier, I think you can be aptly prepared if you get into, like you said, that 4 and 5 year range. But then when you get to that, there's something that happens as a tipping point, and in that tipping point, you start to be more like, you win, I lose. I'll see you.
It's like, yeah, whatever.
Whatever, right? It's like knowing when it's not a good deal. You know when to walk away.
Right.
Like I tell people all the time, they're like, what's the best advice you ever got? I say, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run.
That's right.
It's the best advice you could give every guy that's young, dumb, and full of cum.
Ain't that the truth?
100%.
Yes.
Listen, I'm glad you came in. Believe it or not.
Thanks for having me, man.
This has been like an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
I know. It flies. It's just one of those things. Yeah. I had the same thing happen with Dan. Like we just started rapping and chopping
he's got
it
the
up.
best stories. So
yeah, he's quiet, but he just starts, Dan Hardy, he just starts telling these little stories, and he's another one with his fingers on everything.
Sure.
Let everybody know where to find you. Plug your websites too.
Oh yeah, for sure. So on Instagram, I'm at Scotty OTM, Scotty on the mat. chipsahospital.org, United Cancer Centers. .com. One thing we didn't talk about, I did want to mention is that, down at Chipsa Hospital, at my hospital, we're really known for doing cancer and autoimmune disease. But just recently, with the stem cells that we have and the technologies that we have in the treatments, we're starting to treat COVID long haulers people. So there's a lot of people out there that are suffering long-term effects from COVID, and that's something that we're starting to work on, treating those people, the brain fog, the fatigue, the lung damage. There's stem cells you can use for the lung damage. That's really good. NAD plus for brain fog. We do detox. We do ozone therapy, hyperbaric chamber
Love the
therapy.
ozone.
So yeah, you got to come down. Like we can do some stuff for you. I'm not a doctor, but I can put some years on your life if you know what I'm saying. Especially our detox programs. We do a lot of detox for cancer and autoimmune patients.
Where in Vegas is the location?
No, we're in Playas de Tijuana.
Tijuana.
Yeah. And then my gi company is My Lucky Gi.
Yeah. I'll put all the plugs down below too. And
right on. Thanks.
Listen, I know it was short notice. I appreciate you stopping in. Like I said, highly recommended.
Yeah.
Highly recommended, believe it or not. So everybody said, you got to get Scotty on. You got to get Scotty on.
Well, I appreciate you having me, man. It was good.
Yeah. No,
I can't believe it's already been an hour and a half.
It's crazy. It flies. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the sponsors. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com. I want to take a minute. I want to thank Gallo Technologies. We got a beautiful new wall. I'll try to give you guys a little bit of a wide shot that we just redid and reshaped. Yeah, I mean, it's freaking great.
It's great stuff.
So
super cool.
I appreciate
this all modular? Like you just
Oh yeah.
You
move everything around.
Excellent.
So I appreciate them. I appreciate Rhino Metals. They do all the furniture in here. Blackwater Ammunition, of course. Go check them out. I want to thank Pink Box Donuts. We got Scotty some donuts.
I did. I had one. It was good.
Treat, yeah. And of course, Galco Leather Holsters. Right On Optics. Fuck, I'm missing some. Volquartsen Firearms. Scotty Volquartsen. A couple beautiful guns. Go check him out. And I appreciate everyone. I appreciate Scotty for taking the time.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.